Feeling the need for change is at the heart of your ability to make it happen. I'm Vivian Carrasco, and I'd like to welcome you to Turning Inward. I am your creative midwife, your teacher, and host of this podcast. Together, we're going to navigate the interior life by unearthing your personal truth, insight, and your inner knowing. In 2 words, this is your inner work. Hello, lovelies. It is so wonderful to be back with you today. I am trying something a little bit different. So one of my favorite mystics is Anthony de Mello. And his last, I believe this was his last book. He wrote a book, or a book was compiled, called The Last Meditations of Anthony de Mello, The Way to Love. And it's something that I just keep on top of my desk, and I actually flip through because I just resonate so much with his writings. The premise of everything is that love springs from awareness. And awareness is kind of my thing. So in order for us to really begin to love, we have to awaken that awareness. Anthony de Mello says it's not easy. It's painful. The most painful act is the act of seeing. But in that act of seeing, love is born. Pretty beautiful. So this isn't done in chapters. They're just like little sonnets. And about midway through the book, there's a chapter called Men of Violence. And he quotes from Matthew 11:12. The kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and men of violence have taken it by force. So what he does in the opening is he starts to compare the serenity and the splendor of a rose in bloom. And he compares it to the restlessness of our own lives. He says that the rose has a gift that we lack, and that it is perfectly content to be itself. We are not perfectly content to be ourselves because we're programmed from birth to be dissatisfied, to be anything other than what we are. He says that is why it possesses the artless grace and absence of inner conflict that among humans is only found in little children and mystics. So he asks us to consider why we're dissatisfied with ourselves, why we're always wanting to change. And he says this, you are full of violence and self-intolerance, which only grows with every effort that you make to change yourself. So any change you achieve is always accompanied by inner conflict. And you suffer when you see others achieve what you have not and become what you are not. That suffering and seeing is a term that I use often as compare and despair. It is a human tendency. It's pretty difficult not to do. I think one of the reasons why this passage resonated so much with me and why I wanted to sort of do a little teeny tiny discussion and mini book club on it, just you and I, is because I see how difficult it is for us to be kind to ourselves. What an absolute challenge it is for us to be accepting of who we are. It's like we can honor and respect and admire the gifts all around us for everyone. But when we look at our own, we go, really? Is that it? Is that enough? And when I was writing my dissertation in 2007, 8, and 9, around that time frame, there was a passage that I came across about language, how we were steeped in it so much that we don't even see it there, kind of like a fish in water that's thirsty. And my hunch is that's how we disregard our own gifts. He goes on to say, and I'm skipping through this a little bit, you want to become more virtuous, more loving, more meditative. You want to find God, to come closer to your ideals. Think of the sad history of your efforts at self-improvement. that either ended in disaster or succeeded only at the cost of struggle and pain. Now suppose you desisted from all efforts to change yourself and from all dissatisfaction. Would you then be doomed to go to sleep having passively accepted everything in you and around you? There is another way besides laborious self-punishing on one hand and stagnant acceptance on the other. It is the way of self-understanding. This is why pretty much everything I do is in and around awakening to awareness. Because when the awareness is there, the suffering subsides. So Anthony gives us this way that's different than just punishing, suffering, withholding, and stagnant acceptance. And he says that it is self-understanding. He gives the example of, you'll see this if you compare the attitude of a scientist who studies the habits of ants without the slightest desire to change them, with the attitude of a dog trainer who studies the habits of a dog with a view to making it learn something. If what you attempt is not to change yourself, but to observe yourself, to study every one of your reactions to people and things without judgment or condemnation or desire, to reform yourself, your observation will be non-selective, comprehensive, never fixed on rigid conclusions, always open and fresh from moment to moment. Then you will notice a marvelous thing happening within you. You will be flooded with the light of awareness. You will become transparent and transformed. Will change occur then? Yes, in you and your surroundings. But it will not be brought about by your cunning, restless ego that is forever competing, comparing, coercing, manipulating in its intolerance and its ambitions, thereby creating tension and conflict and resistance between you and nature, an exhausting, self-defeating process, like driving with your brakes on. No, the transforming light of awareness brushes aside your scheming, your self-seeking ego to give nature full reign, to bring about the kind of change that she produces in the rose. Artless, graceful, unself-conscious, wholesome, untainted by inner conflict. Since all change is violent, she will be violent. But the marvelous quality of nature violence, unlike ego violence, is that it does not spring from intolerance and self-hatred. So there is no anger in the rainstorm that carries everything before it, or the fish that devour their young in obedience to ecological laws we know not, or body cells when they destroy each other in the interest of a higher good. When nature destroys, it is not from ambition or greed, but in obedience to mysterious laws that seek the good of the whole universe above the survival and well-being of the parts. It is this kind of violence that arises within mystics who storm against ideas and structures that have become entrenched in their societies and cultures when awareness awakens them to evils their contemporaries are blind to. It is this violence that causes the rose to come into being in the face of forces hostile to it. And it is to this violence that the rose, like the mystic, will sweetly succumb after it has opened its petals to the sun and lives in fragile, feeling loveliness, quite unconcerned to add a single extra minute to its allotted span of life. And so it lives in blessedness and beauty like the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, with no trace of restlessness and dissatisfaction. The jealousy and anxiety and competitiveness that characterizes the world of human beings who seek to control and coerce rather than be content to flower into awareness, leaving all change to the mighty force of God in nature. Awareness, as a process of transformation, begins with noticing without judgment, naming, and then nurturing what you want to grow. Practicing your own form of neuroplasticity, because your experience changes your brain. And when you turn ordinary moments of our daily living into million-dollar moments, the neurons in your brain fire and wire together, strengthening, building, creating. When you inhale the scent of the rose, or turn your chin up to the sunshine, or as I've been known to do, jump 2 feet at a time into a puddle with your rain boots on. These are very simple, very ordinary things that cause awe and wonder and curiosity and fun. It is not the intensity of an experience. It is the amount of times you have that experience, which is why one of the very first homework assignments that I give my clients is to notice what brings them to life, what enlivens them, what brings on those feelings of the thing that they want most. And it's different for everyone. I'm actually going to read from my notes from this last class. I say that we begin with finding our own joy by first notice what gives you life, and then naming it, and then finally nurturing that awareness. Identifying, uncovering, disclosing what moves you and gives you feeling. And if you don't know what that is, a cool tool is to use that comparison, that contrast that Anthony de Mello mentioned in the rose, how we are not that. And if you can't find what brings you alive, then at least notice what's draining you of your life. Because you're coming into sacred attunement. These are all messages. Messages that tell you where to go, who to be with, what to strengthen. The thing about this process, though, and it's interesting, in the noise that I hear and see on the channels that I visit, there's a lot of talk of maps and blueprints and step-by-step processes. And you know, I really wish that this was like that, as it would make it so much easier, because you really do have to develop your muscles at uncertainty. You have to develop your skills at risking failure, at risking not knowing. It is really tough not to know what comes next, to try to sit in the space that you're in, building courage to move forward. But there is no map. There is no 3-step process. It's not even logical. It's not even logical. I find myself saying to my clients, make haste slowly and don't change anything yet, even though that's exactly what we're together for, to make change happen. But before you can do that in a non-violent way, you have to just witness, and noticing comes before witnessing. What is going on in the moment? What are my patterns? What is it I'm looking to make different? But it is the bravest work. It requires the most courage to do this, as you're literally chiseling away at the layers that you've put on that cover your soul. that weigh your spirit down in order to make someone else happy, in order to make someone else like you, in order to make someone else respect you. This is when you drop that and remember what it was that you already know, but you have forgotten. And my preferred approach isn't with this violence that Anthony de Mello talks about. He's kind of pissed off when he's writing that, isn't he? Because he sees it so much. And I really do too. And I believe in the opposite, the exact opposite. To touch your own heart, you have to be kind. To touch your own heart, you have to be gentle. To touch your own heart, you have to be patient. Change doesn't feel good. There's a tension there. There's a tension because you're dying. Whenever a seed opens, it dies to itself. It's no longer a seed. So it cracks open in order to grow. And there's a lot of uncertainty there and a lot of tension in that space because you're no longer the thing that you're letting go. You know, I say I work with people who are going through growing pains. It is because you are no longer this and you are becoming that. And you're in the middle of that space where you know that you're letting this go and you want to move on to that. And it could be a major life experience like it was for me, of David retiring from the military, changing jobs, moving, selling and buying a house, kids leaving the nest, I was going to say empty nest, losing a social circle. There's so many growing pains of I am no longer this, and I need to become that. My most recent transformation was I am no longer a student, even though I'm always a student, but I am a yoga teacher. And that shift was so painful because I did not do it with kindness. I was so judgmental. If I had been compassionate and kind, I would have moved through that transformation much more smoothly than I did. But if you're growing bigger, if you're getting better, you will feel fear. There will be uncertainty. There will be discomfort. And the only thing that you can do is allow it. Don't push it away. Don't kill it. Don't fight it. Allow it. Wait patiently and watch closely. I read somewhere that a mind without spiritual training can only focus on anything or anyone for no more than 2 minutes. So just in that very beginning stage of your growing pains, of your being, of your new way of being, of your becoming, wait patiently, watch closely, be still, and pay attention with love and with kindness, and you will begin to find your own joy by noticing it, naming what gives you life, and then nurturing your awareness. So even though that is a 3 steps, it's not the blueprint to get there, but it is a cycle that you can repeat over and over and over again. Do less so that you can be more. I'm going to read this one more time because it's so beautiful. Be still. Wait patiently and watch closely as a witness without judgment and with kindness. That is the only way to touch your own heart. So if you're moving through this kind of transition, be kind, be gentle, be patient. And thank you for joining me. Let me know if this little one-on-one with you and I and Anthony de Mello and his little thoughts on the way to love resonated with you. It was fun for me. I enjoyed it. But what matters is if it was fun for you, if it was meaningful for you, if there was something in this that resonated with your heart. I'll see you on the next episode of the Turning Inward podcast. Thank you. If something needs to change and you don't quite know what it is yet, tune in and turn inward. I host an online learning community where we can figure it out together. It feels like a little family, and it's a place where you can be supported and offer support because togetherness sparks change. Visit my digital home at viviancarrasco.com to learn more.